everyone, and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann, and you can call me H.
My name is Ryan Quintal, and you can call me Q.
Now, Q, you've spent the last week or so around GDC, which is luckily enough in your, not hometown of San Francisco, but your current hometown of San Francisco. And even more interesting, I bought a bag of floss picks, I think they're called. They're for flossing your teeth, so you don't have to wind the floss around your finger.
Oh, yes.
But there's 150 of them in that bag. And I don't know if I'm going to floss 150 times in the rest of my life. So, I'm really have my water over my head on this one. I guess let's just go ahead and get started now.
We can go right into it.
I am curious about hearing about GDC. Did you see anything that really caught your attention there?
So, yes, I being not a game designer and more of a product web designer, I kind of skipped a lot of the game design stuff except for one, and I don't remember the exact name of it, but it was called something to the effect of some no good game developers may or may not discuss the making of Nier Automata. And in the panel was Yoko Taro and another person whose name escapes me because obviously Yoko Taro, who I didn't know anything about before that. He stole the show.
Yeah, naturally.
And he's here. He's wearing a mask. He's this creative eccentric. He's exactly my type of person. And he starts talking about the making of the first Nier game, which I did not play. Did you play the first Nier?
Yes.
So he was saying, and you might already know the story, maybe it's well known or not, but he was saying if you look at the overworld for Nier, you will find it almost down to the second of traversal the same as Ocarina of Time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And the way that he sort of designed the map to be like a large central location and then all these interesting offshoots were also copying Ocarina of Time. Apparently he was very taken with that game. And I just thought it was interesting that all these years on, here we are, video games we think of not associated with Nintendo in any way, and yet Nintendo still wrote the book on all of this stuff.
And of course, if you play through Ocarina of Time a second time, then you learn the backstories of all the bosses and you start to feel bad for killing them.
That's right. You see, Ganon is actually a very sympathetic figure when you really look at it.
He's just bound in the same cycle of reincarnation that you are, and always cast as the villain, which was the subject of one of our early pitches. I don't remember the episode number that it's on, but you'll see The Legend of Zelda somewhere in the title where we pitch a darker turn on the Zelda franchise.
You know what? You kept talking about that, and now it's making me think, in a way, Link, Zelda, and Ganon all represent three different ways of handling eternal reincarnation, right? Which is sort of, Link seems to always be oblivious. Zelda's slowly getting more and more depressed as the games go on. And of course, Ganon, he just keeps getting grumpier. I would too if I was coming back as animals and all this stuff.
Link always needs like an uncle to give him a kick in the shorts. Like, hey, this way.
Yeah, I guess Tingle would be, if he was in all of them, he'd be the guy who'd be jubilacious in his enjoying of eternity.
But that's just a theory, a game theory.
Yes. Now let's pitch some video games.
All right. I will start us off today. So over the past few months, my partner and I have been watching the Harry Potter movies, and it was just last night, actually, that we finally finished with number 8. It was not the first time that we'd seen them, but I bought a big Blu-ray package full of all 8 movies right when I came back from my trip to England last year, and it's been about 5 months or so we spent just watching through all of these movies and having a really good time while we were kind of rediscovering these stories and kind of falling in love with the whole Harry Potter spectrum of films again. And one of the things that I was really interested in is how do we really bring this experience of Harry Potterdom to video games, because there have been some Harry Potter games, but none that have been genre defining in the same way that Star Wars has been adapted into games and has defined genres in its footsteps as it's gone. X-Wing versus TIE Fighter and Jedi Outcast, and all these great games that have really been toeholds in each of their respective genres. So what I was thinking is it would be neat to have a competitive spellcasting game that is based on like motion controls, maybe voice recognition. I don't know about that. It depends on the platforms we're aiming for. Use motion control to cast various spells, and you have different movements for each spell. And part of what makes us different from other games that have been similar to this in the past is that you can use the environment around you not only to kind of trigger traps for your enemy, just like in those final battles in the last few Harry Potter movies where they're going all around the castle and knocking down walls and stuff like that, but you can also cast part of your health into Horcruxes around the stage. You pick objects and you can perform a special type of spell to enchant an object with a part of your life bar, so you have less to work with, but the other person has to destroy those before you lose the battle. If they don't find them in time, then you are revived somehow, like Voldemort. So it's a little bit of Prey with an E. It's a little bit of, just a regular one-on-one shooter. And it's a little bit magical as well. So let's start the clock and see where we can go with that.
I am picturing in my head when you said this, and maybe it's not like this for you, a cool over-the-shoulder view, or perhaps like more third person, where two people, like if you have a motion control, like the left hand can not only be motion, but kind of be like rotate your character around the stage, kind of have a little motion or movement there. And then the right hand almost feeling like a Wii Metroid Prime aiming and kind of thing. What's your take on that?
What I want to not get away from is using the like flicks of your wrist to cast a spell, which I understand makes aiming a little bit difficult, but I was thinking if we're working with magic anyways, then, a little bit of homing spells wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So, I don't want it to be like a first-person shooter aiming necessarily. As far as over-the-shoulder versus first-person goes, I think that would depend on the platform. I think for something like the Switch, an over-the-shoulder would be really good because, it's a little bit less precise, and so you're more kind of focused on the environment around you and moving your character around and being kind of quick and nimble. Whereas if this was a VR title, then going first-person would be pretty much the only way to do that. You have the one-to-one hand tracking, so you have a lot more accuracy in the tracking and the ability to kind of cast those spells, and it would feel really cool if you felt like you were the one doing it. So yeah, I guess different priorities for different platforms.
I'm also wondering, like, if this is one of my favorite aspects of Sea of Thieves is the showing someone else the map you're holding, which is just this really almost, I think game design wise, a strange choice. But I think one of the things that I want to see in this competitive spellcasting, like, be able to have that vision if I'm competing against someone and see the spells that they're casting by, like, I don't know if there's small slight trails on the wand, or I almost want to have it so I only, like, I can move my hand around, but only when I'm holding down a button am I like casting a stroke or something. So it's like tracing these symbols in an exact way. And if I know somebody else's spell book backwards, right? That's how I would get to know their spell book. It's like, I recognize that spell, but I'm facing it, so I'm seeing the mirror of it. And that's how I know the extra add-on is somebody's cast a Horcrux as opposed to just like a fire spell.
That different types of spells could leave trails behind, as you said. It's kind of like The Witcher. They can have each different type of stroke would leave a different color trail behind, so you can kind of see like, they're casting a red, green, blue. I know what to prepare for. But as far as enchanting Horcruxes, these objects around the map that can save you in times of dire need, you want to make sure that the opponent doesn't know what they are. So you would want to cast some sort of a vision obscuring spell, like a flashbang or a smoke grenade or something, like the magical equivalent of both of those, or find a way to get your opponent on their back so they have to stand up, giving you enough time to make that hex.
That in-game can translate to really fun visual effects of maybe one of the arenas, like there would be smoke in a place anyway, and so if you kind of cast some camouflage, or maybe it goes more the route of that cool like stealth invisible look that you see oft used.
Yeah, and this could be, I mean, as big of a game as people would want to make it. Like, you can go to classes. That's where you would learn the various spells.
In real life?
Well, I mean, not in...
Well, maybe there could. Maybe
Sure.
Well, the special edition comes with a real book.
Right, just like Ni no Kuni.
Yeah.
Well, that always feels cool. Your in-game character, you can maybe walk around the castle, or you can use your magic wand to interact with things, or brew potions, or whatever it is that you would want to do in a Harry Potter kind of world.
Do I have to... One of the things I'd really love to see in this is a really great wizard creator, because I always get so immersed when I get more creative control and customization, and I feel like all Harry Potter video games, by nature of how they have to be sold, you're always playing someone in Harry Potter or Lego equivalent of them.
Yeah.
So to carve out your own tale, and like maybe depending on what spells you use or something, you become a member of one of the houses. You kind of add yourself to the lore.
There could be a whole introductory chapter where you have to use some sort of a problem-solving mechanics, or multiple paths you can choose to go down, and when you get to Hogwarts, you're sorted accordingly, depending on the choices you made there.
Yeah, and I love the idea of it being competitive and trying to, I assume, damage each other or the environment.
Yeah, you can go through duels, you can fight dark wizards.
So now you could also organize online, monthly, quarterly, yearly, whatever, tournaments against people in each house. Right. Yeah. And so now you can actually have that feeling of, oh, yeah, Hufflepuff's won. Let's do this thing.
So I wonder what it would take for this to be like tight, like a fighting game is. You're casting various spells. It requires a lot of memorization, like a lot of old school fighting games. But it's slower because you're not able to get attacks off quickly necessarily, unless maybe there is a flick of the wrist would send a little bolt like you would often see in a Harry Potter game that can be deflected pretty easily as well. And so maybe you have that option of a quick bolt versus a more complicated spell that would take a little bit longer to cast. And so, there are some fighting games that have a little bit slower. Samurai Showdown or Arms even is a little bit slower than usual fighting games. So it's maybe it's not an impossible feat.
Yeah, I don't think so. And if you had mana meter, magic meter, whatever, that was always ticking upwards, and you couldn't use certain spells until you had an energy threshold at one of those points along that bar, then you could keep the pace up by saying, well, you actually got to cast a lot of the small stuff in order to like save up your energy before you cast one of these major spells. And, you could do the Madden kind of aftertouch feel of like, yeah, you cast a spell, but you can kind of curve it at the end or something with an additional flick. That would make it feel like Arms, directional, but I also think like a Street Fighter of meter management.
It would be kind of fun to be able to put like different spins on your spells, like you would have in Arms, how you're able to curve your arms, or even in a bowling game, how you're able to put the spin on the ball and kind of arc it back towards the pins. Maybe doing a little twist of the wrist at the final jab of the spell or whatever. You can have various effects. So somebody could know what spell is coming, but not necessarily what you're going to do to it, what modifier you put onto it.
Yeah, and I even like the idea of maybe certain buttons on my right controller, my face buttons, can help you make a variant of a spell of like, oh, he actually cast tri-fire bolts that don't hone versus like the single firebolt that does.
So what does defense look like? Are you just holding your wand up in that direction to try to kind of catch the spell? Or I guess you could cast a shield, or you can do something with either one of your hands, really. That would be like a shield type of effect.
Yeah, I love something like the left trigger being bound to like a steady defensive thing, but I think you should have that risk reward of if there's a more exotic / more difficult way to block, then that helps you like harness some of that spell's energy, and
Oh, yeah.
whether you can deflect it back or that builds your meter quicker.
That would be interesting to build your meter quicker if you're able to. Yeah, but I guess then what we're doing is we're putting a larger divide between those who are already good at the game and those who are really bad at it.
Yeah, it's
which
true.
is hard to not fall into with when designing fighting games.
Yeah, and I almost actually will say this to that, which is I would love to see more fighting games have competitive tiers, right, that enabled more and more complex features of the game. So maybe, the easiest level of this that everybody can play, and the free play, if you will, when someone queues for that, they are just doing the spell casting and they have shield to block. But when they do the advanced or the competitive, then you can add on additional layers to the game.
That's all the time that we have there. I'm going to have to give this a name.
You know what I've always been enchanted by is the word combo that I feel like has been associated with Harry Potter before, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could do the Wizarding World Tour or something.
That's pretty good. Wizarding World Tour. Has a certain WWE ring to it.
Yeah, WWT. That's what it is, baby.
All right, I'll take that. Wizarding World Tour. Even though it's not a invitational world touring type of event.
the stages.
Has the same sort of,
The arenas are very exotic.
Sure. It'd be like a Street Fighter type scenario.
Yeah.
Why don't you bring us something today?
All right, Age, let me hit you with this. My pitch today is you are a professional streaker. You have a game that is both a weird Fusion Frenzy type of frantic minigame paired with a slow plotting Hitman preparation phase where you are getting into disguise, getting yourself in the best position, and then you get naked and run as fast as you can and try and cover as much distance as you can. And then, of course, perhaps you find a way to evade or get back out of sight, back into disguise, something like that. But that is it. You are going streaking.
All right. Let's go ahead and start the clock there. That's interesting. When you said streaker originally, I had in my mind the image of a flasher, which is a very different brand of, because that is a little bit more Hitman-like, where you're able to kind of duck back into disguise afterwards. But I like this. This is very arcadey. Essentially, you're kind of creating a run, a series of like a combo line, and like in Tony Hawk almost.
Yes.
You're envisioning this before it takes place and reacting to things as it comes up. And so I think it'd be really fun to have, the cops come and chase you, kind of like the Abominable Snowman at the end of Ski Free, or, dogs, or even a bull in a Spanish matador type of arena. Yeah,
I love the idea of sending this all over the place like that. And of course, in my head, it almost starts controlling like an NFL blitz or something when you're in the middle of trying to run and dodge, because it would feel so funny and great to have somebody like a security guard like miss a tackle as they were trying to get you.
Or you could stiff arm them if you're able to get the timing just right.
Yeah, now that I think about it, it should have exactly a football control, shouldn't it? Juke, spin, stiff arm. These are all great.
I would love it to get like just more and more silly as it goes. So, at one point you're on a space shuttle and you're streaking on the moon or something.
Or just have the animation be the guy frantically trying to hold his breath.
Or running between air bubbles or shelters.
Yeah, I think that there's a way to make a fun but casual version of the Hitman experience. And I know that like Hitman, it can be approachable if you play it in a very light way, but finding the spot in the crowd does, to your point, feels a lot more arcadey, feels a lot more like, okay, I hit the circle, in the right spot, and that's a good starting point for me to try and hit this 360 spin.
It's a lot like Burnout Paradise, how you can kind of free roam around that city, and then you come to a point where you see like a bunch of buses lined up or something, then you hit both of those thumbsticks in, and you go into that, I don't remember what they call it, showtime mode, crash mode, something like that, where your car just starts flipping around and everything that you touch explodes and sends you into a higher combo multiplier.
That's exactly it. Like, so you can purposely locate yourself at a spot where that'll make the distance you have to cover more difficult. But right, that's the chance for you to get the bigger combo and be taken down multiple times.
One of the aspects I'm interested in seeing what your mental vision for this is how do you handle the nudity? Is it like comic nudity, like you would get in I was going to say Leisure Suit Larry, but I don't think any of those games actually had nudity in them. But something like where like a Saints Row or something like that might have some like comedic nudity in it, or would it be like Sims blurred, boxed out nudity?
Maybe you can get away with doing both, where if somebody can make their own character here, they can choose an endowment size for any one of their body parts, but we can still put like a hilarious, like a black box that you see on TV that like doesn't necessarily track very well and is a little bit behind sometimes, and you see a little bit more than you want to, but mostly covering it up.
So now, would this be only male characters, or would you be able to choose?
I think you have to be able to choose, and I actually was thinking when it comes to endowment, endow, your chest, butt, yeah, sure, and downstairs any way you want. So you can do a lot.
You certainly can. Let's think about mechanically, how do we set this apart?
Yeah.
I always think one of the things that makes the Showtime mode in Burnout Paradise interesting is that certain things that you can hit that have kind of unexpected effects that kind of propel you farther than you thought that you would be.
Yeah.
Whereas same thing in Even Better in is it Dangerous Golfing, something like that, made by the ex-Burnout team. It's a game where you basically hit a golf ball around various environments, like a Parisian manor with a bunch of china lying around, and so you try to break as much as you can. And if you hit certain objects, then it will reinvigorate your ball to bounce around this environment. So I want something so that every run doesn't end in a gradual slowing down and a gradual fulfillment of the line that you had planned out. I want some way to add an unexpected element that would kind of reinvigorate the chase and make you think on your feet.
Maybe, let's say that each of these stages is designed so that there are lots of public spaces that has room to streak across, right? Mm-hmm. And so you get to one of these things, you position yourself into the corner. You're like, okay, I'm going to start my run here and see if I can make it to just the next sort of wall of people over and get back into disguise. Well, what if occasionally, because you are this gross person, the crowd, when you get to your designated exit, kind of pushes you away? And you've got to find another designated exit where they kind of like say, no, your combo is not done yet, or the session you're in is not done yet. So you kind of lose control of the plan and the timeline associated with the streak.
There could be springboards on the ground that can send you up to a higher level of where it's about like kind of learning the stage as well, just like in Tony Hawk, where all the secret entrances are and all these various spots that you can go to.
And I think depending on the place and location, the crowd could maybe throw various things at you that you're trying to dodge and stuff along the way.
Banana peels and such, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to brainstorm some fun situations to put the streaker in. So maybe like the Pope is visiting town and having a parade in the Pope Mobile. And so you got to find your way to break through the crowd and run up the parade until you come to the Pope in the back, which is like the ultimate goal.
I love that. And then now you get you can pull in the Hitman themed events thing, and you're like, hey, the Star Wars Episode 9 premiere, here you go. You're going to streak through the premiere and just have all these weird, wacky, fourth wall breaking tie-ins to things.
You can do like a Buckingham Palace type thing. Place of royalty. You could go through an art museum.
I mean, you have to do the Louvre, right? It's the most fantastical location. You can't do like kids' birthday party. There's just like it's too gross. maybe like a neighborhood could be the scope of something where you're like kind of busting down fences and ending up in all these neighbors' yards and having that kind of old comedy bit where people are dodging out of the way and screaming and all that stuff.
It'd be kind of funny to kind of lampshade the fact that there's not any children in this universe.
Yeah.
By saying like, the world was unable to have any children after some sort of mysterious, event happens. The aliens kind of neutralized the human race and they were no longer able to have children until one man found that his libido was restored. Kind of like an Austin Powers type thing. And so just like the opening of the second Austin Powers movie, I think, he just gets naked and starts going through the city, seeing who he inspires.
Yeah, there's like it should be the most stupid, comical, like ultra dark setup. Like in the future, no one can have children. This man is trying to build up people's hormones again. And so he's going to go get, it's a Super Nintendo level of commitment.
This is perfect. Well, anyways, that's all the time we have there. What are you going to call this naughty romp around town?
Man, Romp Around Town is pretty good. I was calling it Streakin USA.
Streakin USA, I like that. Or a Streak Fighter.
Streak Fighter would be
Gone
good.
in 60 seconds.
I will take all of. How about Streakin USA : Streak Fighter - Gone in 60 seconds?
All right, we can have it all. We're not the ones that are actually publishing this.
That's right.
And we go now to our community. You have sent in a few pitches our way, video game ideas for us to read on the show. We haven't read them beforehand, so we don't know what they are. We receive them blindly and we just deconstruct them on the show.
They come to us in the night. It is a mystery how they arrive.
Messenger owls bring them in. Anyways, this one comes from Steve Hunt, who has posted it on our website. That is playwrightcast.com/pitch will take you straight to the pitching portal. Steve Hunt says, a VR game similar to Talk or Everyone Explodes, but flip the viewing situation around, where the player will be in total darkness aside from the sound in the headphones, and the other players will be watching and helping via the monitor. The player with the VR headset has to navigate around an area or room with the use of the controllers and low subtle sounds or vibrations, along with instructions shouted out by other players, completing tasks in a set time limit or something similar. Very interesting. Let's go ahead and start the clock.
I loved this idea the second I used a PSVR and saw that the person who was not in VR could watch me play. I was like, there should be something that uses the VR headset as a blindfold and just uses the experience of being in VR, whether that's, like Steve outlines here, controller vibrations, 3D audio, that sort of stuff. Is that enough to create a game?
So what I'm interested in, and I don't know if this is a part of Steve's idea or not, but it would be really cool to see each player having different sources of information that are kind of equally important. And so the players outside the headset can have the visual information, whereas the players inside the headset would have the auditory information. And so you can queue up timing based things that, each player would have to guide the other essentially through these swinging axes or, whatever kind of traps you find yourself in.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. One of the things that I think to me is always tough is the experience of somebody who does not get the visual component, right? Like, I guess the person with the headphones staring at the screen potentially as the other person is going through stuff. How do you imagine that setup?
The other person is outside of the headset and they're looking at the screen and they can see just like a regular video game on screen. And then the person inside the headset, maybe it isn't black because that's kind of a hostile environment to put them in, but maybe it's really kind of gray and there's fuzzy and there's not a lot of detail. You couldn't navigate it by yourself.
Yeah, I was just thinking it almost like that person still needs some sort of like vague outline of the objects in question. And I think it would be cool that if the developer made maybe all the different objects in the world have a different type of vibration, feel, or pattern. This is certainly more possible with the HD Rumble in a Switch. If it's like if you go to touch a vase, it kind of wobbles a little bit or something that is giving you some signal of delicacy versus how solid something is.
Or there's things that the person on the outside could see, like there's a rope versus a snake, and grabbing the wrong one would be very bad.
Oh, yeah, right. Exactly. And of course, by the low vision person, they're just
they both
seeing.
Look very similar.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, I like that. And to me, I go straight to horror for something like this. I don't know about you, but like that whole idea of the person, the end of Silence of the Lambs, right? Where Clarice can't really see, but she, potentially the vision around her is being seen by someone else, I guess. And so having that, but that being a communication thing could be really quite scary, especially if the person in VR is hearing all these horrific sounds around them that are freaking them out.
I think this would work really well as a dungeon crawler type game, those old first-person games that they used to make for old computers, and they still make occasionally. The Ethereum Odyssey, I believe, is a modern example on 3DS. But these are first-person games, but they are kind of grid-based, and so every time you push forward, you move to the next square of the map, and you're navigating these large labyrinths and finding treasures and such. And this can definitely work on a horror environment as well. But I think that something that has grid-based movement would be more effective than something that has free movement, because it's really easy for somebody to just navigate themselves, down a pit and not feel like it's their fault because they can't see. Whereas if everything is a square that you're dedicating yourself to, like a space on a board game, then it's the other person's fault for not telling you not to go forward a whole other square.
Yeah, that's true. And then I wonder if there's a view for the other person that is the top-down thing, because I feel like one of the way that those grid-based games feel strong to me is the sort of distinctiveness of the path you're carving. You kind of visually can find your way back. So if the other person knows the path back, instead of just blindly guessing oh, I think it was back 2 squares, and
Maybe the map is inside the headset.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess you can pull up a map, or you can see the gray fuzzy world around you. So the person who's navigating needs that information from the person who's inside. I always just want to give the wrong information to each player, make them communicate.
Yeah, that's a really great way of thinking about it. So now I can say, look, maybe as the other person's guiding me, I'm moving around. The map is also being revealed to me the same way like a Tyrion would. And as you're doing that, it's the other person that kind of has a hint of what's in each of these directions. So they tell you which one to go down. And then if it is almost RPG, like if you in the headset then end up in a bad situation and locked in combat or something, then you can do some really fun, simplistic VR combat and keep the other person saying, don't send me that way. Last time you did that, I had to fight bats or whatever. Yeah,
that'd be fun. Having them try to narrate or dictate to you. You've got something on the upper right hand side of your character. You better start swinging in that direction.
Yeah, just a low vision fight with, especially if something had any sort of echolocation or, that sort of sensory stuff. You could see sound waves potentially, or heat signatures. You just get different types of vision.
Oh yeah, there could be enemies that are invisible to either player, but the other one knows that they're there. And so you're trying to gauge the priority of enemies, but there are some that the other person doesn't have information about.
This is not a good idea, but I'm saying it anyway. When I think about your concept of making sure each person has not the information they need, but they have each other's information, I wonder if you could do a thing where one person is potentially fed some sort of misleading information. Why I say it's a bad idea is obviously you don't want to just screw over your players as they're playing. Yeah. But something where maybe one could get the opposite inkling of the other. Back to the snake situation, right?
So if they know that I'm not supposed to be the one who trusts what I hear, if you do hear something, then that might be I don't know though, because it's hard to shield if there was something being played on the external speakers. It's hard to shield that from the headphones that the person's wearing, so they might think that they've heard a legitimate auditory cue, and that gets a little bit messy. But yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Maybe if this was an online game, I don't know how you pull off the very low latency required.
Yeah.
But if it was online, imagine being paired with someone who you don't know on the other end of the audio. Like that could be an unreliable narrator situation.
Or we talked earlier about I don't remember the game was, I think was this the one where you were little characters piloting a big like Pacific Rim robot? And it's important that the both of you communicate as you perform different tasks in this giant robot. And there would be certain points, certain enemies would be able to use recordings of things that either of you had said earlier and playing those back at the wrong times to other points in the game. And so this could be, if it was an online thing, it could work similarly where it would record little bits of the conversation or a few commands here and there and just kind of randomly play back the wrong command or the wrong information at later points in your adventure.
Could you imagine two players getting opposite goals? Like maybe the person who's telling you where to go, you don't know if they're being awarded for killing you or saving you. And so you kind of have to figure out, all right, this person's been telling me to go left, like maybe they know about a monster down there. Maybe they're just messing with me and they're not sending me in the way I need to go to get out of here.
And maybe you have to go to this kind of oracle character, or you can choose to, and it's very beneficial to the adventure that can point you in the direction of treasure chests, but this oracle speaks aloud to the character that's in the headset and can tell that person, where this very valuable treasure that would benefit both players is. But the oracle can also tell the player that the other one is in this run set out to deceive them. And so maybe be wary of some of their advice. And so you never know, once you reach the oracle, you never really know whether or not you're on the same side anymore. You can start to suspect, is the other person out to get me? Or are they on to my deceit?
Maybe if there's a way both for the person who's controlling the character to bluff the direction that they went in versus where they really went, a la, a shining hedge maze situation. You can find different ways to, like what would be the reward of killing the person? You get all the treasure, I guess?
That is tricky because if you're outside the headset, you're not really interacting with the computer, so you'd have to sign in 2 profiles beforehand, and it gets a little tricky. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're not able to figure out all these little details.
Oh, minutia.
But as we always do, we throw it back to the community. If you, Steve Hunt, or anyone else would like to contribute anything else to this, then go ahead and leave us a comment on the show page over on our website at playwrightcast.com. We have pages for all of our various episodes, and they all have comment spaces where you can continue to grow each of these ideas and make them something new, something completely unseen before.
It's true. And if you have a pitch in mind, remember, it doesn't have to be through email. You can tweet us an image. That's what has been done before. And we will figure out a way to gamify it, if you will.
That's right. We're okay with very challenging submissions as well. We will find a way to make it an interesting video game regardless of what it is.
And it's the end of the show, which means it's time for me to say thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song, Hello World, off the album Blue Noise. You should go give it a listen. It's very good.
And now to take us out of the show, I will give us a miniature idea. How about like a hospital tycoon type game, but for an old-timey, before ethics were created, mental institution?
Ooh, the art style is going to do a lot for that one.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, we'll see you next week.
Bye.